Georgetown and Centennial Towers in West Bay. And by the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands. MedLab in Smith Road Plaza, your complete medical laboratory solution. Call 949-7331.
Talk Today is proudly brought to you by Pirates Fest 2022. Stay in the know. Get the full event lineup at piratesfestcayman.com.
And Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village. Convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today, the Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program. We ask our listeners to avoid statements or comments which are abusive, derogatory, malicious, or defamatory. Do not use any indecent language or make any statement which is false or misleading. Email talktoday@candw.ky or call 1-800-534-8255.
Courtesy of Flow,
Cayman's #1 network that connects you to your world like never before.
Let your voice be heard. Once again, here's your host, Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. And I know many of you have been patiently listening, and now the vote has been cast. So we have officially the new Speaker of their Parliament. And we're going to have a chance to chat with you about that. But looking forward to a very, very engaging and informative discussion, both with Attorney Law James Samuel Jackson and a wonderful lady, and one day she'll be called Lady Bridget Kirkconnell. And while we await, because of the incredible traffic congestion that we've been experiencing recently, as Mr. Jackson gets settled, and we get into our discussion, talk about the proposed two bills before the House for digital identification and the like. Maybe if Miss Bridget would allow me just to say, it's a Friday afternoon, a warm Friday Talk Today welcome. If you would pull that microphone a little bit closer to you. It's one of these good things, and it moves up and down and a thing and hardly makes any noise. How are you, Mom?
I'm well, thank you.
It's, if I may, as we wait for Sammy to get, settled and we get into the studio, it's good to see you. Someone like you who, came back stock on the scene, and understanding how this country has continued to develop and evolve, and the importance of family and the importance of us giving from every facet of our being, so that we help to make our society better. From your service in the community to serving once on, in the National Security Council, a very, very involved business lady, a strong mother, a great friend. It's a pleasure. You inspire many. Tell us, it's a Friday, and I would not want to do a disservice, to our listeners without having Mr. Jackson and yourself both seated. So I'm excited about that. I was in preparation for our discussion, looking at the legislation, just sort of give the listeners a perspective, looking at similar legislation in other jurisdictions, the discussions that they had amongst their parliamentarians, amongst their citizenry, all the citizens, then the other things that transpired. Quite an involved piece of legislation, especially for a jurisdiction seemingly, this small.
Right. Well, just for anybody who, we are waiting on Sammy.
He's right there.
I'm glad he's right there. But, we'll wait for him to get into the problems that we see with this bill. But while we're waiting, it occurs to me, which would make the lives of our citizens better? An ID card or a better transportation system? Why are we not discussing, a proper bus service for people? Why are we talking about this other shiny object when we have very, very real problems? And I'm only bringing that up because Sammy is stuck in traffic. But, look at the debacle that happened a week ago. And, what are we waiting for? A lightning bolt to hit the politicians to say, wake up? Wasn't that enough? But so, I'm just kind of I'm just comparing it. Like, how serious is
what's the timing,
the
the urgency, the
what
priority?
What is the urgency?
Yeah, okay.
I think we have much more pressing matters, and I just don't get the rush for this legislation.
And as I listen to what you're sharing, there are many individuals who probably on the surface, like for instance, and we'll get into it, some would say, well, this is good. It's an ID, and it sounds great. Perhaps for those who have looked at the legislation, did a comparative analysis of similar things in other jurisdictions, and maybe asking a question or two, it may come to light, hey, this is something that needs to be further considered, or this may be something that, wow, I didn't realize it had these implications, good, bad, or indifferent. Is that part of the challenge then from what you were sharing? One?
Yeah. I think the challenge for me has been finding people who have actually looked at the law on both sides of the aisle. So I'm not happy with either side of the aisle, because as I have, and the private sector, quite frankly, everybody's just said, oh, hey, it's just, what are you worried about? This is just a little ID, Bridget. Come on, it's not mandatory. You don't have to do this. But I'm looking forward to Sammy being here because he can get into the technical parts. But it is, whether I like it or not, I am going to be enrolled in a register, and I'm going to have an ID number, and it is a very invasive law, and people need to pay attention to what's happening very fast.
And I'm glad you shared that, because it seems like a lot of things, just generally speaking, we as a populace, not just the wider citizens, but specifically the voters in particular, are overwhelmed and involved a lot, and not always up to speed then and there with everything that's transpired within their country. And I'll share this probably again when Sammy arrives with one of our listeners, commenting on the ID system, to see whether that is reflective of other people's perspective, or whether it is as informed and exhaustive as perhaps being presented. But to your point, if there are other things that are of concern, and just looking at a list of things that this particular listener shared, yes, transportation is an issue, crime, public safety, cost of living, employment, all the things that have been on the cards, they may or may not, as this listener shared, may or may not have been something that were properly addressed and acknowledged way back when. They may or may not be something that can happen, now. But the listener's asking the question, are there things that are even given sufficient consideration and urgency? Now, I wonder if we, as a people, let me just read this in interest. For those who are joining us, we will have a discussion. We're going to focus on the proposed two bills that come in before the House on national ID. I'll tell you what they are. 2 or so Tuesdays ago, we did have a team from the respective ministry on, as they had shared then, the Honourable Minister responsible was travelling. They come, get it out in the public domain, because the consultation period was only, relatively speaking, a short time.
Short. It's very short. And
it goes before the House next week, I think, when the House meets, now that they have officially elected a new speaker. And then the minister would come on at some point to speak to it. Let me just read this one listener's comments. Right? It says the ID will assist with the public transportation system as well. Referenced in an earlier comment. The ID is long overdue and necessary, and it's also easier to implement, and would be a lower hanging fruit that can be done. Political expediency, perhaps?
Well, here's my thing. You might have an ID card, but if you have no bus to pick you up, what's the point of that card?
Okay.
And so the point is where is this reliable transportation? That because there's a lot of people, we have a lot of cars on the road, there's no question about it, right? But if we had a reliable transportation system, would we have less cars on the road? I think probably. And would it be cheaper for people to get to work and go about their lives? Great, you have an ID card, but where's the bus?
Yeah, and I guess as that comment from this listener, you have a plate, but there's no food to put in it.
Yeah.
Okay. This listener continues to say, so long overdue and sort of low hanging fruit. If you have been listening to the radio, we heard Honourable Minister Kenneth Bryan speak about the public transportation issue. So I agree that needs to be done, but now understand they need to be done as best as they can, but as soon as it can be done. Minister Andre Ebanks, also spoke clearly on the issue this morning in the other radio show.
I heard it.
And it made it very clear how the information is segregated. Short-term thinking is the problem with most people, and the idea is a long-term issue with lots of benefits across the board.
Okay.
And we can talk about some of those benefits, and as Sami gets into the discussion, we can sort of, he brings not just a legal perspective, but a very reasoned, logical, impartial view. I guess that's why he is the expert.
So for me, I've heard the reasons given for the need for this ID register and this ID. And when you realize how invasive this law is, which will be great when Sammy's here because people have no idea how bad it is, you're going to have to think, well, do I really need this ID? Is it worth giving up my freedom and my privacy to have an ID? I'm not convinced that we have such a problem with the old and, the young that we need to bring in this draconian legislation. And we're only figuring it out now that if this is such a problem, what took us so long to figure out that the old and very young are so disadvantaged? I mean, what?
Yeah.
So, I heard something, one of the reasons that was given was, there's an example where a baby was born in Cayman Brac and needed to come to Grand Cayman. They had no ID, so they had to go get a photograph and get it notarized. Cayman Brac is tiny, and this island is still small. I mean, how is that really a good reason to bring this in? Or you're hearing that, unfortunately, young man didn't get to take his SAT test because for some reason he didn't have his passport. Okay, there might be really, individual reasons, but is the population on the whole completely so disadvantaged that we need to bring in draconian legislation?
And this is the interesting thing now. As we welcome Sami to the studio, we're going to pause and take the break. And when we come back, please join us, be attentive, and be informed. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
First, there was little. Then there was grand. But just maybe, the best was saved for last. Cayman Brac, the Pirates are coming! Friday, November 25th through the 27th. Friday, Heritage Day and Gimme Story at Spot Bay Community Cove starting at 10 a.m. and kickoff party at 9 p.m. at Coral Isle Club. Saturday continues with a family fun day at Scott's Dock, followed by the boat float parade starting at Buccaneers. Cut to the dock with fireworks show and after party at Tiger Bay Cafe. Sunday finishes with the Pirates Farewell lunch at the Alexander Hotel. They came, they partied, they conquered. Pirates Fest Cayman Brac, November 25th through the 27th.
Savannah Pharmacy saved my life.
Really? Was it the medication they got you?
No, not this time. I forgot my wife's birthday. They were the perfect place for last-minute shopping.
That's one way to give yourself heart failure. Don't wait last minute for Christmas. Savannah Pharmacy is stocked up for Christmas right now. Gifts for men, women, and children. Home decor, clothes, toys for all ages, fragrances, candles, handbags, and so much more. I was there the other day, and trust me, they'll even wrap all your presents too.
Savannah Pharmacy, a lifesaver in more ways than one.
Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village provides you with more than just prescriptions. Always just around the corner with everything your family needs for this holiday season. WhatsApp your prescription refills to 929-5045.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab. Blood test, x-ray and mammogram, all of that is MedLab. Affordable fees and friendly service, a full professional team. MedLab is always comfortable, MedLab is always clean. For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
'Tis the season of gratitude. From the MedLab family, happy Cayman Thanksgiving.
Wouldn't it have been grand if you had purchased land 30 years ago? It may not be 2020, but a perfect vision has never been more clear. Cayman Brac and Little Cayman, poised for growth with an eye on the future. Your land, your history, your future. Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
Kirk Freeport's Black Friday weekend is back in their 50th year with the biggest Cayman sale of the year. Kirk Freeport Black Weekend deals are available from Thursday 24th to Monday 28th in all stores, with the biggest deals of all at a special reopening of Kirk Freeport on Cardinal Avenue on Friday and Saturday only, with up to 75% off all clearance jewelry and watches. From Thursday to Monday, you will find deals at La Perfumery and Strand locations, and you'll get 50th anniversary sweepstake entries on all purchases over $100. The 50th anniversary Black Friday weekend is our biggest yet. KirkFreeport.com for details.
The 8:12 a.m. weather report, Monday through Friday, is proudly sponsored by CG Britke. Insurance, health, pensions, life, where people come first. They say variety is the spice of life. And that's why at Subway, we're introducing the new Boneless Hot Sub.
Say what?
The premium sub brings new ingredients like spicy breaded boneless chicken, French's crispy fried onions, and buffalo wing sauce, bringing a zesty and flavorful experience with every bite. Add some of your favorite veggies, cheese, and ranch sauce of your choice of freshly baked bread for the ultimate boneless hot sub. For a little spice in your life, try the new boneless hot sub from Subway.
So good and tasty.
And make it a meal with a drink and chips or cookies. Subway. Eat fresh.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointment.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
'Tis the season of gratitude. From the MedLab family, happy Cayman Thanksgiving.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Afternoon, welcome back. Thank you very much for joining us in the studio. If you've been joining us earlier, we have Ms. Bridget Kirkconnell, and together a fellow who has very graciously in time brought his intellect, his interest to our areas often. Attorney at law James Samuel Jackson. I call him Samuel Jackson. Everybody knows him, you know. So, good afternoon, my friend. How are you today?
I'm good. First of all, apologies for making it here 15 minutes late. I got a little bit too ambitious with the estimate of travel time, but
I used the helicopter, boy. I got you earlier.
I did hear that you and Bridget were rightly identifying that as one of the matters that we should be given more priority to. So I'll leave it at that. I think you dealt with it properly.
Well, thank you, and thank both of you for allowing us a chance to talk about this bit of legislation, proposed legislation. The House, I think, is expected to meet next week, and I have had the distinct pleasure having on Mr. Tibbetts, Mr. Brown, and they brought us along what they thought was their counsel, not the counsel at law. And as Mr. Trevor came in to speak with us, this really presented the legislation, and understanding that the Honourable Minister was travelling and wanted it into the public domain, given the expected consultation period. From there, I've read some of it as I was sharing with Bridget, looked at other jurisdictions, just trying to understand. I say this publicly to say that a lot of people have, well, what do you know about it? And I said, well, I read this, but I'm not going to venture into an opinion other than reading this what it says. But I find a lot of people are confused. So from your perspective, Sami, give us an insight into what the law says, and then perhaps together we can understand the potential implications, the good, the bad, and the like, if that would be helpful.
Sure, thanks for that. First of all, there's two bills.
Okay.
I think a lot of the confusion that's being generated is because of the fact that we have two bills being proposed simultaneously. One is the National ID Card Bill, which I don't think is of any controversy at all, save and except for the fact that it has every other necessary provision in it for implementing a national ID card system. And as I understand it, and I have to admit I haven't delved too deeply into that one because I was sufficiently distracted by the other much more problematic bill. But that bill has everything in it to implement a national ID card system that is, I suppose, tantamount to a passport, a travel document, identification document, by and large, there's no controversy there, because that is the sort of thing that we're used to. That is the sort of thing that we have disclosed. That is to say, the data necessary for identification purposes alone is something that everyone in the whole world is used to giving up in order to gain a passport. Somehow we dropped the ball as a country with the passport deal and gave passports. This is what I was explained to me by people who I would expect to know. And we have passports that have been issued to non-nationals, which seems to defeat the whole purpose of a passport in the first place. But for that purpose, for that reason, we have been battling for some time with that issue, and it is being one of these bills is being proposed to deal with that by way of a national ID card system. That bill is largely non-controversial, at least as far as I've seen so far. But what it doesn't have in it is the creation of the registrar of that it would, under the structure that as is proposed, it would need to replace, I suppose, the passport office folks, who would then collate and preserve and protect the information regarding personal identification for the purpose of the card. That was the first question I asked myself. Why do we need two pieces of legislation? Well, the ID card, I get it. I don't take issue with a number of the things that have been said by the folks who are, let's just say, looking at the nuts and bolts of implementation of that platform. I believe technically they know what they're talking about. Legally is a different thing. The reason for that is that this second bill that we talk about, the National Identification Register Bill, right, creates, it proposes to be something for the purpose of, I read the statement, a bill for an act to provide for the establishment, management, and oversight of a register for the identification of persons. Okay. And again, we wonder why that's not in the other bill. But it goes on to say, and for incidental and connected purposes. Normally, that's the typical language you'd see on a bill.
Yeah. I want to make sure our mic is, not on your way, but also that our areas are filled with your voice.
But
so that there are two simultaneous pieces of legislation being proposed to the House. Okay, so not one but two. All right,
two, with the same consultation period, which in and of itself presents a problem because you have to look at not one but two pieces of legislation. And as I said, I haven't had a chance to look at the National Identification Card legislation in detail. I haven't had a chance to fully digest the full ramifications of the National ID Register Bill. But I've seen enough to know that it's rife with problems, which is one of the reasons we wanted to speak to you, or speak to share with the public what we've found, so that they can make an informed decision. Because there are some things that are being said that are simply not accurate.
Okay.
Right. Now, so we asked the question: why do we need the creation of a separate? Why do we need a separate bill to create a registry? Right. And that, and because you could literally enshrine that in the single bill that's proposed for the national ID card. But when you read the second bill, the Identification Register Bill, it creates this registry that is imbued with wide sweeping powers. It leaves open-ended the definition or the spectrum of information that can be requested. And then when you dive a little further into it, and I'll give you actual specific examples in a bit, you realize that this isn't just about personal identification information. It is about other information required by other acts, other legislation. So we're creating a register, right, to cache all of the information that the government from time to time decides it needs to have from us. And the registration, despite what is being promoted, is mandatory. Oh, why do I say that? Right, you just need to read, right?
And I wanted to share that because I've had a number of people just since we've been here who say, well, it's voluntary. And I haven't counted,
That's
but
the big problem with it.
Yeah, so people think it's voluntary. Sammy, you were saying this is not voluntary but mandatory?
Yeah.
Okay.
It creates a register, right? Section 3 talks about this establishment of a register, which will be called the Identification Register, the register, which shall be kept and maintained for the following purposes, and then it lists a number of purposes, which some of which are a little bit vague and consequently a little bit troubling.
Okay.
But before we get into that, subsection 2 says, subject to subsection 5, the following persons shall be enrolled in the register. A, Caymanians. B, permanent residents. C, any other person who is legally and ordinarily resident in the islands. And D, any person who has participated in a registrable event. That is an activity like obtaining a passport, passing through customs, immigration, etc. And a catch-all, any other person or category of person prescribed by regulation made by the cabinet. I wonder what that is. Must be an illegal alien. I don't know.
Yeah.
But there's a catch-all. So literally everyone who comes on the Cayman radar, so to speak, everyone who's living here, not just Caymanians, not just permanent residents, anyone who's living and is ordinarily resident in the island, and anyone who passes through a border, because that's a registrable event, will be subject to the register.
So cruise ship passengers, airline passengers coming in by private yacht.
I don't even know why they would do that, because that's more than ambitious.
Okay.
Right. But certainly from the perspective of you requiring ordinary resident people, a lot of whom don't necessarily come here to be subjected to the regimes that are in place here. They live primarily elsewhere, or they have residences elsewhere as well. And Caymanians, definitely top of the list, shall be enrolled. So this issue that or this idea that's being promoted that this is voluntary is absolute rubbish. We didn't make this up. We downloaded this bill from the government website where it's published, and it literally says shall. Shall has a specific connotation, I believe.
Thou shalt not kill.
Exactly.
Right. Shall. Okay.
Yeah. So when Bridget and I and some others discussed it, I've been having a lot of conversations with folks, and unfortunately because of the time frame, and that is the primary purpose why we're here today. Because what bothers me more than anything is that given that the potential ramifications of this bill, this is not something that government should rush through. What gives us even more cause for concern is when we hear that there are presentations made to the public where the government admits that it's been consulting with specific Caymanians.
It does not appear to be a wide group of people that they have spoken to.
We don't know what that's about, but we can say this: this law is mandatory. It requires mandatory registration, certainly of all Caymanians, all permanent residents and persons resident here, and it's not just about identification information. There are provisions that speak to, and we'll get into the specifics of those, to the requirement for disclosure of access to financial and tax-related information. There's a provision that talks about honoring or being obliged to perform in accordance with international obligations. When the folks who live here, right, see this and they get if they take advice on it, there's a lot of folks who are going to be very concerned about that for a number of reasons. That's particularly complicated by the fact that, or compounded by the fact that there are also provisions for the outsourcing of data storage and other functions of the registrar. The registrar can basically delegate his authority or any part thereof to another civil servant, for example. And that then begs the question: why are we empowering a single civil servant anyhow? This registrar will be a civil servant without question, just the same way that we have existing registrars. And I just sort of pause and segue into a discussion about that. What we did in 2019, right, was pass a Public Authorities Act after postponing it several times. In fact, it was first proposed in 2008. We've had discussions about this on the air before. And that law requires that civil servants are no longer allowed to participate in decision-making process of statutory authorities. Statutory authority is basically an entity that is funded by government that makes decisions prescribed by law, hence statutory authority. All statutory authorities converted to public authorities. Public authorities whilst their boards can be populated by a certain number of civil servants, civil servants cannot vote. They cannot be counted to form a quorum, and they cannot be chair.
On the statutory authorities.
On statutory authorities.
Yeah.
So it's clear that the intent of Parliament at that time, and that law says this law shall apply regardless of any other provisions in any other law, contrary to this law. So we have now we're creating a system where we have one very powerful person, a registrar, whose very appointment seems to be in contravention of the specific intent of the Public Authorities Act.
Okay.
That's the first problem. And worse yet, when that civil servant can then outsource his or her functions to some other entity. We then found out, we don't have much details on that, but we found out that there was an RFP, right, Bridget?
So
and
that's
a request for proposal.
Yes, and it was put out in 2021, and I did look at it. I'm not an IT person, not technical, but it was clear in that our request for proposal that the government will be outsourcing a lot of this. Now, yesterday, Minister Ebanks said that it'll be outsourced, but it'll be within our borders. I'm not quite sure what that means. And then he, because if it's outsourced to a local company, are they then outsourcing it further? I don't know. But he did, Mr. Charles Brown did explain that when it comes to having the ID card and you have your electronic signature, that is going to be approved off island. That's outsourced, right? And of course they said that's being done now, and it probably is. But I don't think we're clear on what's happening to our data, because there are a lot of countries around the world where the data protection has been the number one reason why the public has not been happy about this. And I did see where our Auditor General, in her report in June of 2022, she had questions about the data for the Department of Planning and, the data protection of that. She had some good points. And so, but it is clear that they have that provision to outsource. And I don't know if we have the ability. We won't know what happens to our data.
And there's a consequent cost of it. Where's the cost benefit analysis?
So that is the other thing that the Auditor General said in her press release. So, this law started under the PPM. I do not know if it's changed since they started it. But when they were doing it, one of the reasons given was this was going to save government money. That has now been removed from the strategy. And if I could just take a minute, let me see if I can find it.
This is reading from the Auditor General's.
Yes. Okay. She said a couple things that were interesting. She said that we found that government is not capturing the cost of designing, developing, and delivering its projects for online services. This is a significant gap, as it is essential information for demonstrating value for money. So we have no idea what this is going to cost. We have no idea if we're having a new, it seems like this is a new government department, we're watching the birth of a new government department, but we don't know. But I'll find it in here. I think this might be what I'm looking for. I'll find it and read it after, but she basically said that, and it's true, they have removed the strategy of this being benefiting in terms of cost. She said it much better than I'm saying it. But
that print is very small. I got a bigger font.
Well, I'll find it because she said it so well.
Yeah, I remember reading it. Yeah.
But the cost benefit, we're no longer looking at this as a way to save government money. That strategy's gone. So anybody who says, "Oh, but this is gonna save so much money," that strategy's gone. Now, in fairness, that was published in June, and that's all I've got, June 2022. So they may have reintroduced the idea of cost savings. But one thing that I learned just listening to the interview on the Rush Hour with the minister and Mr. Brown, I think it was maybe Wednesday night, they've raced ahead because they've already procured the ID cards. Mm-hmm. And it seems like it's all over the place. There's no real strategy for doing this, right? I just feel like it's being rushed. Nobody understands it. And why have we procured the cards already when the law hasn't even been passed? Just a question. I would ask that question. If it was my business.
Skeptical and history being the teacher that it is, that's probably the reason for the promulgation of legislation, because some entity needs to benefit from it. I'm just being cynical about it. But, you know, the problem we have, Dwayne, is we have more questions than answers. We don't have any answers right now. Mm-hmm. Hence our push to convince government to put the brakes on this runaway train, take a very careful look at it. If necessary in the short term, proceed with the national ID card bill in the proper form that doesn't promote any invasion of our privacy beyond what is necessary for actual identification purposes, does not breach the Constitution, because we believe that's important. It seems that a lot of times in recent years, we seem to have forgotten about that Constitution, although when it's convenient, we like to roll it out and pat ourselves in the back for promulgating it. But we do have a constitutional right to privacy. That battle has been fought many times now on different fronts, in the Grand Court and all the way to the Court of Appeal, and in one instance at least the Privy Council. Mm-hmm. So I say that to make the point. There are important, much wider implications here, right? So we went through the bill as best we could in a short term time frame we had, and the questions we asked ourselves are along the lines of, what is this proposed national identification register really about? Mm-hmm. Right? We focused on the incidental and connected purposes, and asked ourselves the obvious question: if this is all about the creation of an ID card system, why do we need a separate bill? Mm-hmm. Go back to that, right? To create the registry. Mm-hmm. The registered land law, for example, creates the registry system, and the necessary statutory tools to implement the same, all in one single piece of legislation. That is of much greater moment than this type of registration. If this is truly only about a national ID card, it should be a very simple, straightforward legislative exercise, if that's all it's about. Mm-hmm. So, when you read the bill, the one we have an issue with, the National Identification Register Bill, it becomes clear that this new registry will require, under threat of criminal penal sanction, mandatory registration of practically every person living in this country. Mm-hmm. Perhaps unless they're a special group or special interest category, or we saw that provision just now in the catch-all. Which registration shall then be subject you to the whims of the registrar, the single civil servant, who has the duty to perform a wide array of functions, and consequent thereto has wide sweeping powers, including fining you several tens of thousands of dollars for obstructing said registrar when they require information from you. That to me is a frightful invasion of privacy, unlike anything that exists in a free democratic world. I like to add that, because I think this is being glossed over as being just a national identification card bill. It is not. This legislation enshrines, and I'll speak to specifics in the bill that I say underscore that point. This enshrines a massive invasion of privacy under threat of criminal prosecution for you to voluntarily give up information that in other free democratic societies they pay billions of dollars to very specialist people to obtain through clandestine methods. And we are expected to hand it all over up front, right? And they'll store it safely for us, even if they got to outsource it. And I take the point, I didn't know that the minister had clarified it'll be onshore. I hope that can be reflected in the legislation, because it's not currently.
But the problem is they might have it onshore, but it goes to this is what I don't understand.
It's digital data,
an onshore company might deal with it up front, but who are they outsourcing it to?
We have someone listening who shares, the card, the ID card is optional, but the register is mandatory.
Correct. And the card is not. The card is much less of an issue. Right. And bearing in mind that is what is being promoted, it starts to look like a red herring. Okay. You know, you put that in one piece of legislation and you distract folks with that and say, oh, it's all about a national identification card. Why are they kicking up a fuss about this? This is something tantamount to a passport process. What is this fuss about? But meanwhile, you're promoting another piece of legislation simultaneously, much more involved piece of legislation with massive invasions of privacy enshrined in it, right? And that has mandatory registration.
Yeah. Someone shared that it would seem as if the two bills are compatible, they're complementary, they need to go together in order for it to be...
They do not.
They do not, okay.
There is no need for the national registration. But you could create the registry, like I said that earlier, in the national ID card. If you're just creating a register for identification purposes, for to cache, to store, to manage, to protect personal identification information alone, i.e. the stuff that's in your passport or your driver's license, right? Okay. Your address, your eye color, your hair color, whether you're here or not, whatever, right? That sort of stuff, that can easily be done under one bill. Because, like I said, the registered land law that we introduced in 1977 still stands, with one piece of legislation creating the register, the registrar, creating the register, implementing the registered land system, and creating the post of registrar, which may very well be outdated now thanks to the Public Authorities Law, right? We need to be looking at those things, making what we have compatible with the Constitution and, you know, the more modern legislation that we've brought online to line these things up with what is acceptable in a free democratic society. So to answer the question, there is no need for the second piece of legislation. And when you read it and you realize the magnitude of it and the scope of it, the potential scope, because it can be expanded by regulations. So
may I ask make a point here? So we're being told, but this part I don't buy. Just as a regular person, they're telling me this gives me control over my data, and I can check and I can see who sees my data. But what they don't tell you is, and Sammy can talk about it, I think it's Section 30, it is a surveillance tool. And you won't know if there's the reasons, and Sammy can tell you, there's a whole list of reasons that the public authorities or other people, I don't know who, but can look at your data without you knowing, right? So we're being told, yeah, you can see it. You're in control of your data.
Absolute rubbish.
Baloney.
Section 30 is actually about the record of access to information. So that's about the registrar recording who accesses your information. And it lists a whole lot of folks who can access your information without and the registrar can deny you the right to know that it's happening. That includes things like the prevention, investigation, detection, or prosecution of criminal offences. Okay, fine. You don't want you don't want to empower somebody to thwart the investigation of a criminal offence. But then 3 says a substantial economic or financial interest in the islands, including A, compliance with international tax treaties or international cooperation purposes. That's pretty wide. B, any monitoring, inspection, or regulatory function exercised by official authorities, including regulation of the financial services industry, or any monetary, budgetary, or taxation purposes in the islands. So even when remember when this is about someone else accessing your information and you're asking the registrar, can you tell me who accessed your information? If the folks who access your information fall in any of those categories, which are absolutely wide, then the registrar can say, you're not entitled to know. And the fact that they're excluding, it references taxation and financial information, tells you right there, it wouldn't be a provision in there for such things if it isn't intended that this legislation will involve, right, the caching of data relating to such things. After all, why have a provision for it?
Right.
If that's not intent.
Okay. We do have a news break. We'll come back. I really welcome your insight so we can get people, thinking and talking and hopefully making good decisions. Please join us after the break.
Today's biggest news. Radio Cayman. Your voice, your choice.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
With your latest headlines, I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins. On Wednesday, December 14th, St. Ignatius will be hosting their concert and Christmas fundraiser at 7 p.m. The event has a grand prize of $25,000 CI. Tickets are $25 and are available at St. Ignatius and from a number of local supermarkets and other businesses. In international news, we share your pain. Russian President Vladimir Putin has told a group of mothers of Russian soldiers who have been fighting and some of whom have been killed in Ukraine. Opposition has been growing to Mr. Putin's decision to invade Ukraine. Across Russia, groups of mothers of serving soldiers have been openly complaining that their sons are being sent into battle poorly trained and without adequate weapons and clothing, especially as the winter sets in. Some have also accused the Russian military of turning those forcefully mobilized into cannon fodder following a string of heavy military defeats in recent months. Rapper Kanye West has said he intends to run for U.S. president in 2024 despite facing several scandals over his recent behavior. The star, who has legally changed his name to Ye, posted a video of his campaign logo to social media alongside the caption Ye24. He also claimed to have asked Donald Trump to be his running mate. West previously ran for president in 2020, but that campaign flopped, attracting a meager 70,000 votes. These are your headlines. I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins.
For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
Radio Cayman is pleased to feature this special Sister Islands historical vignette brought to you by the Ministry of District Administration and Lands. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your Sister Islands. Hinton Roxroy Connolly was born in Creek, Cayman-Brac on 9th September 1937. Fondly known as Big H to his family and friends, following a 5-year career at sea, Mr. Hinton returned to Cayman-Brac, taking up work with Brac Power and Light Company for 3 years prior to moving to Grand Cayman, where he commenced employment with Cable and Wireless in March 1966. Big H would eventually move back to Cayman-Brac, working his way up from a linesman to a supervisor throughout the 29 years of employment with Cable and Wireless, eventually retiring in August 1994. Following his retirement, Mr. Hinton continued to do electrical work for the many people of Cayman-Brac. Radio Cayman is pleased to feature this special Sister Islands historical vignette brought to you by the Ministry of District Administration and Lands. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your Sister Islands.
Explore your history, explore your land, explore your Sister Islands, the ultimate staycation experience. Your culture, your freedom, the land that time forgot isn't gone. It's your Sister Islands.
Discover all that our Sister Islands have to offer.
From boat days to beach gatherings, leave the catering to Subway. Choose from small and large sandwich platters, double meat wrap platters, and top it off with optional cookie platters for dessert. Or ask about our Subway box to go with the option of 6-inch or foot-long sandwich, 1 cookie, and 1 bag of chips for all occasions and celebrations. Let Subway focus on the food so you can focus on the fun. Visit subway.ky for catering options. Subway. Eat fresh.
Did you know that ValueMed Pharmacy has a free online prescription service? Managing your health and medical requirements has never been easier with ValueMed. Simply visit value-medpharmacy.com. That's VALU-medpharmacy.com and click the Refill Prescriptions tab on our website. Fill in the information for new prescriptions or refills and choose your preferred pickup location. ValueMed on Walkers Road or Boddentown. Then bring in your original prescription from your doctor when picking up. There's no need to stand in line and wait for your prescription. Save time and pick up prescriptions at your convenience by visiting value-medpharmacy.com. That's VALU-medpharmacy.com.
J&M Money touching down again. Now you can send your US dollars at any location on island, including the BRAC. It's easy. Just walk with your US dollars. No need to convert to CI. This is another convenient service available at JN Money. They always find a way to make it easier and hassle-free. So remember, when you need to send your money and you only have US dollars, don't ever think of what to do. Just head straight to any JN Money location and send your money the fast, convenient, and affordable JN Money. JN Money, touching down again. JN Money, ranga to la friend.
Switch from slow to the fastest, most reliable network to get this exclusive Digicel Christmas offer. It costs $0 to switch. It's free and you keep your number. That's not all. Switch today and enjoy 50% off your bill for the next 3 months. Stay on any Christmas plan to get 10 gigabytes of any use data every month for a year on us. That's 10 gigs for TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and more. Hurry in store and make the switch today with this limited time Christmas offer. It's the Christmas that keeps on giving. Digicel, Merry Christmas.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us. We really welcome you listening, sharing, and hopefully through this, not just being informed, but you may be reminded, hey, what I was thinking is right, well, what I was thinking isn't, and we can have a better discussion. Thanks to Sammy Jackson and to Richard Colonel for being our guest. And we're talking about two proposed bills, two proposed bits of legislation that is scheduled to come before the House very shortly. Now, I had the civil servants on to discuss it, but the both bills, Sammy, one's a national identification bill, an ID card.
One is a national identification register bill,
which
creates a registry, and the other one is the actual national ID card bill, which refers back to the registrar created under the proposed to be created under the other bill, and that was, as I said earlier, that's the reason why I thought, well, how odd. Why not create the same registry for the national ID card under that single piece of legislation and get on with it? If that is an urgent thing, and I believe it's overdue, right? And we're not here to obstruct anything that is necessary and derives a real benefit for the people of Cayman. But the reality is, when we look at the other bill, right, and we see this wide array of powers and wide sweeping implications. And we have to be cognizant at all times. It's not just, we have a unique country here, right? An economy based on a successful model. It has no doubt its shortcomings. All of us have our doubts and our concerns about certain things, but by and large it works. If you're going to And it works because it's an income tax free jurisdiction, right? But when you introduce legislation that has enshrined in it the kind of powers you'd expect to see in a legislation for, say, a tax authority in the IRS, for example, in the U.S., but not only for relating to financial information or income information, but it creates a regime where you're supposed to volunteer information up front. Because as far as I know, even in the income tax countries, you file a declaration, and only where there's a reasonable suspicion that you have misinformed the tax authority, they get to investigate. The really odd thing about this is, in my read of it, you have to volunteer the information, and they get to look at it, and they allow anyone they want to look at it. So in many instances, they can tell you that you're not allowed to know who looked at it because they fall in under one of these, wide sweeping categories of people who either conducting an investigation for AML, for taxation purposes, for honoring international obligations, and all those things.
Cooperation agreements.
Cooperation agreements.
Okay.
So that goes back to the basic question. If this is only about a national ID card, why do we need a second separate piece of legislation that imposes mandatory registration for everyone, which then not just Caymanians, Because I would think that a national identification card would be for Caymanians, right? Because that's what it's supposed to be about, replacing the flawed approach we've taken to passports, right? Replacing passports because of the flawed approach we've taken to passports. So why does it mention all these other categories of persons who are not nationals? So you can tell us what you want. Promises are but comfort to a fool. I've been around long enough to know that when you're dealing with politics, right? I don't want you to promise me something. I want you to promulgate what you're promising. Then I'll believe you.
Do what you say, huh?
Do what you say. Pass legislation. Don't say, oh, that's not what it's about. No. You misunderstood that. I assure you, that normally, for me, precedes a disaster of some sort.
Promises comfort of food.
And so, why did the government not propose a single bill centered around this national ID card? It would be done. It wouldn't be. I don't think it'd be even controversial as long as it doesn't involve massive overreach like this other bill does.
All right.
And hopefully is voluntary. Because I don't know if I'd want it, but
all passports are voluntary. There are millions of people in the U.S., for example, who chose not to get passports.
It's the overreach that's the problem. Sammy, can I bring up the point about the? So I saw in the paper about 2 weeks ago that the government is considering bringing on a mandatory cancer registry. Now, I remember when that was brought up about 10 years ago, and people were very, very upset about that because that's very private, right? Your medical history shouldn't be anybody else's business unless you want that to be the case. So something I discussed with Sammy, and its point is section 29, and it says, subject to subsection 2 and 4, a public authority may use identification information from the register for the purpose of A, carrying out any function under any act. That kind of sounds scary to me, but I might be wrong. But
that's pretty wide.
That's very wide. But this one, anybody who thinks that they may not get caught by having to give up certain other information. B, research or so for the purpose of research or statistical analysis to facilitate public administration or policy development. So they might say, well, hey, we're going to make people with cancer a category under the first section. Could that be possible? And now you have to give up your information, or maybe they don't even need to do that. But they might say, well, we're developing a public health policy. We need to know how many people in Cayman have cancer. Now you have to give up your information. Is that correct, Sammy?
Yeah, it could mean all sorts of things. It could mean that they'll look at financial data to determine whether they should tax corporations or persons, individual persons or whatever. Remember, it's research or statistical analysis to facilitate public administration. I don't have too much of a problem with, but policy development, right? Something that government uses then to inform legislation, future legislation.
Yeah.
So what is that about? Government wants to access all our private, personal, financial, medical, and other information to develop policy. Well, at first blush, you may think, well, that's great. Then at least then the government will be making informed legislative decisions. But we're talking about personal information here. We're talking about a country which, on paper, has protected government guarantees protection over the right to private life, right?
Right.
And yes, there are exceptions. Right? But those exceptions are all subject to qualify as what is acceptable in a free and democratic society. And we don't know of any other free and democratic society where government gets to go to combing through your data. First of all, demand it from you, force you to give it up. They're excluded from telling you who is looking at it. And then the government itself or some entity of government can look at it, research it, and use it to develop policy. That's a scary scenario, and we're not. This isn't focused on this government. We know how this works. There's going to be a time in the future where taxation is going to be considered. Right? That's just one thing. There's lots of debate about vaccinations and all sorts of controversial topics, where government could access information, right, and use it to inform itself as to whether they should bring legislation or not. And like I said, that might sound fine. Oh, well, government should have the right. But what government enjoys that right?
Yeah.
Is that not totalitarian?
Yep. And Sammy, that thing about vaccination could easily be brought in under Section 30, where I guess that's 4I, where it says public safety. And they don't have to, if it's in the public safety, they don't have to tell you that they're snooping in your records.
That's right.
So that, what else would they put under public safety, right? And so what bothers me a lot about this is that they'll figure out a way to use this and exploit it.
But as I listen, I'm interested to find out what is happening in the UK. If we know, we see other jurisdictions similar having some discussion with this legislation. It seems like almost all of the existing democracies are bringing in some form of this. I didn't realize how widespread this discussion has been across the globe. So this is not new to Cayman. Jamaica did it last year or earlier?
But they're bringing it in for specific legislative initiatives, as we understand it. Right. I think the one in the UK. Which has been parked, derailed.
Yeah, I don't know where it's at right now, but when the government switched with Liz Truss, I don't know much about UK politics.
Yeah.
They put a stop to the this national ID program somewhere in mid-October. And I haven't really gone back to look at it, but incidentally, they put the UK government in probably around 2010. They came up with this Verify program, and it was supposed to save the UK government a ton of money. It was a complete disaster, and they have abandoned it. I think they're going to abandon it in 2023. They only kept it on because of COVID. For some reason, they kept it. But their own Auditor General was very critical of the UK and how much money was wasted on that program. So these ID programs are controversial everywhere because people, government is starting to overreach in so many areas.
And I appreciate you sharing that, because the reason I was asking, as Sammy was saying about, totalitarian, I'm thinking we have a view of communist countries, respectful in China, irrespective of their economics and the like.
North Korea, probably the convenient example.
Yeah, but the importance of China on the geopolitical landscape. The international media is saying, well, they're doing this and this, their people are subjected to this and this, and that's a communist regime. If what you read in this legislation could allow a supposed democratic government to have similar powers, I'm just wondering, if the inference is an overreach or if it's reading it correctly, Sammy. It seems to be one and the same, whether it's in this democracy or in a communist country that has been accepted.
Well, you already know my views about things that have happened in the recent past vis-a-vis our personal physical liberty, right? And how that impacted, as I saw it, our rights under the Constitution. But this is worse than that. This legislation actually creates an opportunity for government to grab. It's the most massive data grab I've ever seen, or attempt at a data grab and cache of all information. When you look at the law in total, right, it talks about things like the registrar being able to do things to facilitate international obligations relating to the register. Now, what could possibly be international obligations relating to the register?
So our national ID,
is there some agreement that we don't know about? They're going to provide tax related information to some jurisdictions so they maybe get off the grey list. I don't know. What obligations are we talking about? When you use certain words in statutes, there is a red flag, right? And that has a specific connotation. What could those things be, right? Then you look at the registrar, how that entity being a civil servant function, they perform quasi-judicial functions, right? Like adjudicating. They use the word adjudicate challenges related to the accuracy of the register. That adjudicatory process, we have a registrar now that does that. And I'm here to tell you, as someone who practices in that field, that it ain't working for a number of reasons, which I don't need to get into. But suffice it to say that since the advent of the Public Authorities Law, it clearly would be keep in keeping with best practices in accordance with good governance standards to have any adjudicatory function performed by a board of properly appointed people in accordance with that law. So our concerns aren't imagined, and we're just starting to peel this onion. And I use that analogy because it's a good one, because there's many layers, and every layer you peel off, you want to cry more, right? And yeah, well, maybe lawyers are, thought to be a little too myopic. They focus too much on things, but I'm not doing that. I'm looking at the big picture here. What is this all about? Why is it necessary? Who's driving this? And the most important question of all, quo bono, who benefits? Because we need to that answer. That should only be one answer. In every legislative initiative in this country, that question should be asked, and there should be only one answer: Caymanians. So tell me now, who are the Caymanians benefiting from this? Right? Are those the specific ones that were referred to? Who are they? What's this all about? I'm not talking about the national ID card, because I'm not going to fall for that red herring. Right? A lot of people seem to have done that. Oh, we need a national. Forget about that. I think I took that off the table already. We have no issue with the creation of a national identification card done properly. And if they want to create a registry for that, then have at it. But don't tell us that we are wrong in our interpretation of basic English language. Right?
Before we go to the call, I'll reference our listeners' 8th of November segment. We had, the acting deputy chief officer, Mr. Brown. We had Mr. Trevor Gibbs as the senior, policy advisor for investment innovation. Then we had the e-government director, Mr. Tibbetson. This is in the Ministry of Investment, Innovation, Social Development. And the two bits of legislation that we talked about, they were speaking to it then. The Identification Register Bill and the Cayman Islands Identification Card Bill. Two separate pieces of legislation. As you said, Tommy, they're separate and distinct. And I share that to ask because a couple of messages have come in and say, well, they thought it was one and the same, and that one needed to be for the other. But we're gathering that is not the case. You can get the ID bill without having this other identification register, which creates a problem.
Yeah, but if I could just say something here, I think that government needs to put the brakes on all of this, because I look, as a layperson, looked at this national ID register, and I haven't. Every time I look at it, it's like more terrifying. It's like peeling the onion. I haven't even looked at the ID card bill, and so they need to stop. Even if they decide to do that and not say this, I don't know, but I think it is still unfair because the public haven't even come to grips with what this is.
And this is about the public's This isn't some esoteric piece of legislation that only applies to one specific industry or a narrow band of the community, right? This is legislation going to affect the lives and the privacy and the right to privacy of every single person in this country, living in this country.
And coming into the country.
So don't you think, with that in mind, against that background, that a little more than the ordinary consultation period is deserved, especially when you hear talk about, we consulted specific Caymanians. We consulted the bankers. I don't know what the bankers got to do with this, if this is about national ID. Right? Who are you consulting? What happened to all that transparency that we were promised, by the way? Right? Why don't we have town hall meetings about this?
Exactly.
There's much less important information and legislation than this that has been town hall to death. Why not have an open discussion about it and stop informing us? I use that word specifically. Not misinforming us, disinforming us, because if you're telling me that this is not a mandatory obligation to be entered as a registrant under this law, it's either one or two things. You're lying or you haven't read the law. And I don't know which one is worse if you're proposing it.
Okay. We have a quick break to take. We invite our phones, our listeners to call in. When we come back, Richard Colonel and Sammy Jackson are our guests. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Explore your history. Explore your land. Explore your sister islands, the ultimate staycation experience. Your culture, your freedom, the land that time forgot isn't gone. It's your sister islands.
Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
For For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointment.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
'Tis the season of gratitude. From the MedLab family, happy Cayman Thanksgiving.
I hear Le Classique in the Strand having sale.
That's right, 25% or 50% off everything in the store, and shoes as low as $10 and $20.
One day only, Black Friday blowout sale at Le Classique in the Strand. Yes, child, all shoes for men, all shoes for women, all jewelry, all bags, all wallets on sale for one day only.
Everything is 25% or 50% off store-wide. I got to make my way down to Le Classique in the Strand because it's only for one day.
If you're working, you better call in sick.
Friday, November 25th, 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. One day only at Le Classique in the Strand Shopping Complex.
They say variety is the spice of life. And that's why at Subway, we are introducing the new Boneless Hot Sub.
Say what?
The premium sub brings new ingredients like spicy breaded boneless chicken, French's crispy fried onions, and buffalo wing sauce, bringing a zesty and flavorful experience with every bite. Add some of your favorite veggies, cheese, and ranch sauce of your choice of freshly baked bread for the ultimate boneless hot sub. For a little spice in your life, try the new boneless hot sub from Subway.
So good and tasty.
And make it a meal with a drink and chips or cookies. Subway. Eat fresh. Busy, busy, busy. Feel like there's not just enough hours in the day. Savannah Pharmacy, service to make your life easier. Now you can WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. And pickup is just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays. WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. Savannah Pharmacy, wholesome values with modern conveniences.
A month of Sundays means a very long time. What is a week of Black Fridays? It is 8 days of super savings at A.L. Thompson's beginning Friday, November 18th at 6 a.m. During Black Friday week, you can take advantage of deep discounts on electronics, appliances, home decor, and tools. We invite you to review 8 pages of products in the Black Friday week flyer on althompson.com and to shop at your convenience at A.L. Thompson's, Georgetown.
First, there was little. Then there was grand. But just maybe, the best was saved for last. Cayman Brack, the Pirates are coming! Friday, November 25th through the 27th. Friday, Heritage Day and Gimme Story at Spot Bay Community Cove starting at 10 a.m. and kickoff party at 9 p.m. at Coral Isle Club. Saturday continues with a family fun day at Scott's Dock, followed by the boat float parade starting at Buccaneers. Cut to the dock with fireworks show and after party at Tiger Bay Cafe. Sunday finishes with the Pirates farewell lunch at the Alexander Hotel. They came, they partied, they conquered. Pirates Fest Cayman Brack, November 25th through the 27th.
At Doctor's Hospital, we know life happens, and usually when you least expect it. So when unexpected medical issues arise, you need quality care close to home. Located in the heart of Georgetown, our accomplished team of physicians and medical staff treat minor urgent conditions such as migraines, chest and abdominal pain, shortness of breath, burns, broken bones, open wounds, and more. 24 hours, 7 days a week with no appointment necessary. Peace of mind is important when life happens. At Doctor's Hospital, we're always here just for you. Need to speak to someone? Call 949-6066.
The 6:30 p.m. weather report, Monday through Friday, is proudly sponsored by CG Britcay. Insurance, health, pensions, life, where people come first.
Talk to Dick. But I do have some questions. Talk to Dick.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk to Dick.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us in the studio. We have the excellent company of Sammy Jackson and Miss Bridget Kirkconnell. Thank you both for sharing. I trust that as we have these public discussions, that not only listeners can join in if they want to message or they want to call, but they have something that they can go back and say, okay, we heard this. Is that what it is? They can challenge it. I think Sammy used the word openness, accountability, transparency. This is a platform that we would like to be able to encourage more dialogue. Ms. Susan reminds us, I think we have a caller online. If anybody else wishes, the phone lines are open. 949-8037, 949-6990. Of course, Flo has offered up a toll-free call for those who can access. It's 1-800-534-8255. Let's go to the phones, Miss Susan, and after this, let's go for lunch. Hey, good afternoon, welcome, thanks for calling.
Good afternoon.
My good friend, good afternoon, sir. How are you?
Not bad.
Thank you for listening and sharing with us.
Sammy was asking some questions about certain things that is not clear what is actually meant by those provisions of law. And I think in the beginning of the bill, it actually tells you. It says that it's for incidental and connected purposes.
Yeah, I think I underscored that.
Yeah.
I was first.
Yeah, I'm just joking with you.
Yeah, hopefully people get what you were sharing. Man.
But it's the connectivity that worries me. Because the legislation has the ability to make anything connected or incidental. When you dive into it, you can see that. Especially when it has a provision that says for any purpose under any other law.
Including the power to prescribe regulations to provide for those other things.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because that was one of the things.
So the list can grow.
Yeah, and you know that's ultra virus, right? Because you shouldn't have. Principal legislation is passed through the parliamentary process. I'm sure you know how that works. And that for that reason, that legislation should not be able to be amended or expanded upon by regulations, because regulations are subsidiary legislation passed through cabinet behind closed doors. We don't know what the rationale was necessarily most of the time. So when you have whenever you see a piece of legislation that has enabling provisions that says the authority, whatever entity under this law shall be able to expand the scope of the legislation by a cabinet can by way of regulations, then you have a problem, because what you're doing is you're legislating through the back door, so to speak.
Right.
You're leaving the door open that cabinet can at any point in time expand the scope and remit of the law. And that was one of the problems that troubled me about this, but it's even worse than that, because when you look at this legislation, you'll see that the registrar himself or herself will have the ability to develop policy, which I thought up until this point was the exclusive domain of core government, which it would use to then inform how it promulgates primary legislation and consequent thereto regulations.
Well, actually,
so the whole thing is upside down.
The constitutional provision for the development of policy rests with cabinet.
Yeah.
Which is constitutionally.
That's what I'm saying, core government.
Yeah. So, well, the problem here is that what they're doing is they're selling to the public that there's this limited list of things that this will provide for. And then it's asking you to support the law, the bill, to become law, so that you give them approval to expand the list in whichever way that they feel like expanding the list. And so in doing that, it's hidden from the public what the real goal will be, and you won't see it until the bill is passed into law and they actually reveal by regulation all of what they truly intend to be the law.
Classic bait and switch.
And right. For which they would put you in prison, but for which they hold themselves up as good stewards.
Yep.
And I have a real problem with that kind of provision, because first of all, how can I agree to an unquantified amount of provision?
Right.
And that's ridiculous.
An undefined legislative regime. because you're leaving the door open for them to do as they please with your information that you voluntarily provide under threat of fine and or jail time, right?
And when you guys were talking earlier about analysis of data, okay, and to make policy, normally what would happen is that they would come to a town hall and they would sit down and they would tell you what it is that they're planning on doing, and they would seek your feedback on what it is they want to do. Well, what you're doing by allowing that provision is you're saying, oh, yeah, okay, you can look at the data yourself and make a decision about what the policy ought to be. So you're proving that they can just go ahead and do the thing that they feel should be done.
Yep.
It's no longer I'm going to come to you every time we want to do something different. We're not going to just keep coming back to you and ask you if we can do this extra thing. They're just going to do it.
No citizen should have that kind of blind faith in any government, and for no other reason than that the vagaries of politics are such that government could change to an even more invasive mindset, right? And then you have a serious problem. But the government will change, right? That's for sure. Yeah.
And we don't know what the intentions of a future government will be. Okay?
But if you give them the legislative platform, no, they can say, well, it wasn't us that did it. We have all the statutory tools we need to make your life a living misery, to give away your information, to take your information under threat of penal sanction. This is just bad for a whole lot of reasons that would preclude any right-minded government in any other free democratic society in the world from touching it with a 10-foot barge pole. But that's exactly why it's being promoted and proposed in tandem with a national ID card bill, so that they can use that as a red herring to distract us. That's. I'm gonna
offer up some proof as to one of the things that they want to do with this bill. Now, I agree with what you've said, that in fact this is mandatory and it's not voluntary. Mm-hmm. It's voluntary for you to go and collect the card, right?
Yeah.
But like how the British would say is, well, what we're going to do is we're going to put a blowtorch under the metal seat. You could sit in it all day long if you want.
That's right.
The problem is you won't be able to tolerate sitting on a seat that's red hot. Okay? And so effectively what that will mean is that when you go to the bank or you go to some other company, or A.L. Thompson, if you think of how they are currently tracking what you do, when a private company says to you, well, in order for you to open an account with me, I need to see your national ID. Then all of a sudden what you thought was voluntary is in effect mandatory.
Correct.
Because you're not going to be able to go without the bank account. You're not going to be able to go without the account at whichever institution you want to do business with, because they're going to demand it.
Because it's going to be the preferred form of identification. Just like what happens now with a passport. There's certain businesses, if you produce a driver's license, they will tell you, no, we don't want to see that. We want to see the passport, because the passport is deemed to be more authentic. So this is a switch from that. Yeah, I take your point. It's idiotic to say that it's voluntary, right?
Here is an example of what they want to do. Minister Bryan gets on the radio and talks about moving the country to public transportation using electric buses.
Mm-hmm.
And step 2, notice that, step 2, okay? Doesn't say that that'll be the final step. He says that's step 2, so will it be step 3, step 4, step 5? And what he said in step 2 is that after putting in place the electric buses, what they're going to do is look at how to tax the gas-propelled cars in such a way that it encourages you to take the bus instead.
Yeah.
And so I got on the radio and I said, well, wait a second. What you're saying to me is that you're going to put in a public transportation system that's not cheaper than what I can drive around for now. And in order to make your public transportation system look affordable, you're going to raise the cost of my current mode of transportation. Now, this is the kind of stupidity that's being thought of. And if you think that it's a joke, you look at what China is doing in relation to central bank digital currencies. One aspect of what they're doing, which I contend, this is in fact what's being implemented. This is a China-like social credit system / monitoring system, just not called that.
Right. Paula, what's that, Ms. Bridget?
Denny, if I could add, so we apparently are modeled after the Estonia system, but I read an article where the guy who designed the system, I think, he said that until the ID card in Estonia was linked to their banking, the only reason that the people in Estonia used the ID card was to scrape the ice off the windshield. So they forced the public into the card by forcing their banking to be linked to it.
But Estonia is very ambitious when it comes to sort of electronic data processing, etc. They have a very advanced. I've been there. I can tell you for a fact that the electric bus or tram system that they use, state of the art. That card is not connected to your ID. I've purchased one. You can top it up anywhere. It's a pretty simple system. It actually works really good. So if I understand your analogy correctly, they'll use the card for that purpose. Is that what you're saying?
You don't need to have your ID connected to everything you do in order to do something anymore.
Absolutely.
Than you can do those things right now, and it's not connected to it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right? But you see, what you can't achieve is you can't achieve full, total surveillance, which is control and absolute compliance with whatever the dictate is of the day. You can't do that without a national ID. And the point that I was trying to make about what Minister Bryan was talking about is effectively what he was saying is, look, we're going to put in place policies that is going to measure how much you affect what your carbon footprint is. And we're going to score that. And if we think that it's too high, then you're going to pay more because you're negatively impacting the environment more than you ought to be, right? And therefore they will force you to do things in the way that they want you to do things.
Are you saying that this instrument of surveillance, or this card will be used as an instrument of surveillance to ensure and enforce that sort of regime? That's interesting because I never thought of that. That's scary as well.
No, I heard you say that if you just implement the ID card, no, that's sort of okay. Well, not.
No. I said if it's done properly and it's used specifically for the purpose of identification.
Only how you put it in. The 5 pieces of data that you see there, the most damaging one is the ID number itself. And the reason for that is because it will never change except in circumstances where your identity is stolen and it becomes necessary for them to change it for your particular situation.
See,
but here's why.
I'm oversimplifying it then. I'm thinking, well, if it's analogous with a passport, right?
It's not.
Well, I get that. New technology will be deployed because then you'll be able to scan it, etc. And once you're in the digital realm, who knows where it goes? I get that too.
Even if you do not implement new technology, let me show you how it can be damaging. If you go to the hospital and they say, "Let me see your national ID," and they record an incident that connects your national ID to that incident, and you go to the bank and you do a deposit and you connect your ID to that deposit, and you go to some other store and you do the same, whether they are physically connected that one system can query the other one or not. You can walk from one entity to the other and say, let me see all of the records associated with that ID. That's a low-tech way of doing it, but that's all a computer system will in essence do. And then they can analyze and manipulate the data in any way they want to find out, how could I coerce Bridget into doing something she doesn't want to do? Like, I don't know, you name it. Okay?
You pick.
And they can develop a policy to force you to do something, and ways in which they can penalize you if you won't go along with that, all without having to put any excessive energy into doing it, because they will design the requirements of the law in such a way that in order for you to participate in society, you will need the national ID. And once the criteria doesn't match, you don't get to do the thing you want to do.
Hey, Dana, thanks for that. And Simon, to you and Bridget both. We have a quick break. When we come back, we'll join our other callers. Please stay tuned.
Le Classique in the Strand having sale.
That's right, 25% or 50% off everything in the store, and shoes as low as $10 and $20.
One day only, Black Friday blowout sale at Le Classique in the Strand. Yes, child, all shoes for men, all shoes for women, all jewelry, all bags, all wallets on sale for one day only.
Everything is 25% or 50% off store-wide. I got to make my way down to Le Classique in the Strand because it's only for one day.
If you're working, you better call in sick.
Friday, November 25th, 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. One day only at Le Classique in the Strand Shopping Complex.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointment.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
'Tis the season of gratitude. From the MedLab family, happy Cayman Thanksgiving.
First, there was little. Then there was grand. But just maybe, the best was saved for last. Cayman Brack, the Pirates are coming! Friday, November 25th through the 27th. Friday, Heritage Day and Gimme Story at Spot Bay Community Cove starting at 10 a.m. and kickoff party at 9 p.m. at Coral Isle Club. Saturday continues with a family fun day at Scott's Dock, followed by the boat float parade starting at Buccaneers. Cut to the dock with fireworks show and after party at Tiger Bay Cafe. Sunday finishes with the Pirates farewell lunch at the Alexander Hotel. They came, they partied, they conquered. Pirates Fest Cayman Brack, November 25th through the 27th.
Kirk Freeport's Black Friday weekend is back in their 50th year with the biggest Cayman sale of the year. Kirk Freeport Black Weekend deals are available from Thursday 24th to Monday 28th in all stores, with the biggest deals of all at a special reopening of Kirk Freeport on Cardinal Avenue on Friday and Saturday only, with up to 75% off all clearance jewelry and watches. From Thursday to Monday, you will find deals at La Perfumery and Strand locations, and you'll get 50th anniversary sweepstake entries on all purchases over $100. The 50th anniversary Black Friday weekend is our biggest yet. KirkFreeport.com for details.
You know, Savannah Pharmacy saved my life.
Really? Was it the medication they got you?
No, not this time. I forgot my wife's birthday. They were the perfect place for last-minute shopping.
That's one way to give yourself heart failure. Don't wait last minute for Christmas. Savannah Pharmacy is stocked up for Christmas right now. Gifts for men, women, and children. Home decor, clothes, toys for all ages, fragrances, candles, handbags, and so much more. I was there the other day, and trust me, they'll even wrap all your presents too.
Savannah Pharmacy, a lifesaver in more ways than one.
Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village provides you with more than just prescriptions. Always just around the corner with everything your family needs for this holiday season. WhatsApp your prescription refills to 929-5045.
Cayman Brac, your ETA for the air show is Sunday, December 4th at 12:30 p.m. Prepare yourselves for an unforgettable experience.
After more than 20 years, the air show is back in the Brac. Enjoy an aircraft exhibition where you can see the planes and meet the aviators at the airport.
Tango 3 left turn ahead, taxi.
Free parking will be available at the airport. For full details and event lineup, visit CaymanAirShow.com. The Cayman Islands Air Show, landing in Cayman Brac, Sunday, December 4th from 12:30 to 2 p.m.
The offices of dermatologist Dr. Dwayne Porter will be taking appointments from December 2nd through the 10th at his Crew Road Clinic. Appointment slots are limited. Whether you're seeking advanced skincare, Botox, filler, cosmetic skin enhancements, or simply looking to reduce wrinkles, Dr. Porter offers a full-service dermatology and dermatological surgery practice. For more information, email dr.portercayman@gmail.com or call 946-9020 to book your appointment today. That is 946-9020.
Black Friday low price specials have started at Brand Source Home Gallery. Save on selected gas and electric laundry centers and laundry pairs. GE 27-inch gas laundry center only $1,199 and the electric $1,399. GE 24-inch front load laundry pair $1,879. Save up to $700 with special Black Friday prices. Now is the opportunity to replace the old laundry and save big. Hurry, limited quantities and these low prices end Saturday the 26th. Visit Brand Source Home Gallery at 209 Dorsey Drive in Industrial Park or call 623-5000 for details.
Talk to Dick. But I do have some questions. Talk to Dick.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk to Dick.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us, and thanks to Samuel Jackson and British Colonel. We were talking about the two bits of legislation that are proposed to come before the House. I think in parliamentary parlance, they refer to as bills. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Bills.
Bills, not the ones that we pay every day. Bills, must you pay that one?
This one will pay forever. We pass it, I can tell you that.
And
in the current form.
The identification register bill and the Cayman Islands identification card bill. That's the proper title I pulled from where.
Yeah, I think we should probably refer to the second one as the National Surveillance Bill. That would be more appropriate. Because, watching the news over the last several years, when you saw what Snowden was doing with disclosing information, you realize the NSA has to put a great deal of effort and deploy a lot of resources, electronic and otherwise, to obtain the kind of information that this law expects us or provides the potential for us to have to disclose willingly, not willingly per se, but mandatorily, not coercively either, mandatorily, under the threat of penal sanction. This legislation, right, has the potential to make James Bond's job obsolete. You wouldn't need a spy agency in Cayman. You have this intel gathering entity dressed up as a registrar, hived off to some private sector enterprise, managing all of this data, right, for whatever purposes, with government agencies all swarming all over it, looking at it whenever they want for whatever purpose. You being told you're not even allowed to know when they're looking at it, and you're paying for it. That's the thing I want to get to, because what's the cost of this? Where's the cost-benefit analysis?
Yeah. There is none. As we go to the caller, but for what you just shared, if someone just joining us may think you were making this utterance, but you were referring, sort of summarizing what you read in the sections of the law. These are the areas where what you said captures exactly how it is. That's the practical implications of what you're sharing.
Indeed. Oh. And I referred to specific sections earlier, but you have that is the potential of this legislation.
Okay, let's take this the call if we may. Hey, good afternoon, welcome, thanks for calling.
Yeah, afternoon, this is Sterling.
Hey, good afternoon to you. How are you today?
Very good. I'm doing good so far. I want to congratulate Miss Kathy and Will for Speaker of the House. I would like to ask a question about this national ID. So, if this national ID is so important, would it make before I ask that, is it bias, or does it actually restrict that biasness that is going on in the island, regardless of the name or when it comes into your appearance? If you present this card, I know say I'm interested in it, because if I was interested in it, I would ask first, if I contain this, if I possess this card, could I cut my voter's ID in half and just say that that's not necessary anymore?
We don't know.
I did see there is something about this being possibly replacing the voter's ID eventually. That I read it somewhere.
I have
It's
no
somewhere.
doubt. If the idea is to create a central sort of card, identification card, then I would imagine that this, if it's going to be really useful, it would could replace your driver's license, your passport, and your voter's card.
Right.
But I don't know how that will satisfy international obligations vis-a-vis passing through.
I think
airports.
that would be a really good choice.
Yeah.
But the fact that the information part, is that like God's eye?
When we had the team from the government, the civil service on the 8th, they did reference that you would still need your driver's license, and even though this thing would not be a travel document like the passport, conceivably, they have interoperability, and it can be expanded potentially. But I think where I'm sort of getting greater clarity from the questions the public are posing, there are two pieces of legislation being proposed. They're not, if I use the wrong word from the legal perspective, they're not interconnected. One can stand alone on the other. We can have the ID itself without the register.
They are, in fact, connected in that the national ID card legislation doesn't have the provisions for a registrar for that purpose.
Right.
They then refer to this other piece of legislation which has much wider intent, which creates a registrar for all manner of information going way beyond the national ID card. But it made it sound as if one is dependent on the other, and the two are inextricably connected to each other, and that is not the case. They can easily pass a single piece of legislation to give birth to this national ID card. But to the caller's point, I'm wondering what the purpose of that is, because unless every law currently has a requirement for example, where you need to identify yourself for the purpose of voting. You have the elections law and the elector's card. You have the traffic law gives the vehicle and driver's license authority the right to grant you a driver's license, and we have a passport which has a certain significance and utility. So what is the purpose of this? That's what I'm keep coming back to. Why do we need this card? No, I'm not giving up on what I said earlier, that this is not as bad as the registry bill itself, right? But this card, we were left to wonder, why is it necessary, and why are we incurring the huge expense? And Bridget said earlier she has discovered that they've already bought the cards.
Yeah,
or that's been revealed, right?
Yeah, they bought the actual cards already. But back to, I don't remember if I said this when Sammy was here or not, but every single time you hear them talk about why this card is needed, it doesn't convince me that I need that what they're saying is so critical that I need to give up my privacy. And if they have a few people that have trouble because you have a baby in Cayman Brac, you have to go get an image of the baby and it has to be notarized. Well, yeah, that is inconvenient, but do we really need to bring in, this such heavy-handed legislation? And by the way, is it really, really that hard, honestly, to go and get something notarized? Or, and like I said at the very beginning, are we only now just finding out that the very old and the very young are somehow incredibly disadvantaged? I have not heard anything, even from the financial industry. I was told that it's a very, very big problem for domestics and gardeners to get bank accounts. Well, then I pressed them on that. I'm like, big problem? They're like, yeah, thousands. It came down to, well, I know a couple tens of people.
Well, they're normally...
But
they normally have a problem because they're non-Caymanian, so how does a national identity card help them?
Well, I don't. It's a very good question. But, I don't understand. But if indeed that is a problem, well, why not solve a smaller problem somehow? Why are we imposing this draconian legislation on the island? I'm not satisfied with the reasons that I've been given.
Yeah. Caller, Mrs. wanted to break it. What are we saying? All right. Caller, with respect, let's just take the injection to the news, and then we come back to other callers. Stay tuned.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman. Your voice, your choice.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
With your latest headlines, I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins. The Department of Environmental Health reminds Boddentown residents that Saturday, November 26th, is the last day for the collection of bulk waste in their area, and no further extension will be granted. In international news, writer E. Jean Carroll has sued Donald Trump in the U.S. state of New York for allegedly raping her in the 1990s. Ms. Carroll is among the first to sue under the Adult Survivors Act, which came into effect on Thursday. The state law allows a one-year period for victims to file sexual assault lawsuits in New York over claims that would have otherwise exceeded statute limitations. The former president has denied the allegations against him. Qatar are on the verge of a group stage exit in their home World Cup after Senegal condemned them to a second straight loss. The Middle East side battled valiantly but will be out with the game to spare if the Netherlands avoid defeat against Ecuador later on Friday. But African champions Senegal are up and running. These are your latest headlines. I'm Felicia Rankin-Solins.
For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
Busy. Feel like there's not just enough hours in the day. Savannah Pharmacy, service to make your life easier. Now you can WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. And pickup is just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays. WhatsApp your prescription order to 929-5045. Savannah Pharmacy, wholesome values with modern conveniences.
Freedom, Cayman Brack. Freedom, Little Cayman. Soft breezes, blue waters, no traffic. Unwind and rejuvenate your mind, body, and soul. Sister Island Staycations, a taste of freedom. Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
It's the final sale of the year at Reflections with up to 50% savings on selected famous brands such as Nike, Reebok, Puma, US Polo, Adidas, Levi's, and Dockers pants for men and women. This holiday gift-giving season, Reflections gift certificates are the easiest way to share your love with friends and family. Levi's and Dockers holiday collection just arrived. Discover your new style and enjoy huge savings on shoes, bags, accessories, and the most fashionable clothing for all your holiday parties. Hurry in today. Purchase Reflections gift certificates for everyone on your shopping list and outfit yourself from their finest holiday collection. Don't miss up to 50% off savings at Reflections Holiday Sales Event. See yourself in Reflections. Open 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday to Thursday and until 9 p.m. on Fridays and Saturdays. Reflections is located on Shedden Road across from Napa.
We think it's time you crossed over to a new vehicle. And with the Toyota Corolla Cross now at Vant Motors, you have plenty of reasons to make the switch. The crossover body and hybrid engine is a sleek design in a sturdy structure with a spacious interior that opens to extensive cargo space. Stuck in traffic? The high-performance self-charging hybrid system automatically switches between gas and electric vehicle mode, helping you lower both fuel costs and carbon emissions. The Corolla Cross has full LED lighting inside and out, an integrated display audio system with energy monitor, and a dual-zone climate control system to ensure comfort for all. Test drive the new Toyota Corolla Cross Hybrid today at Vant Motors, Walkers Road.
Parma Carpet Christmas sale is back. Starting Thursday, November 24th through Saturday, November 26th for a full 25 hours of savings. With 25% off in stock carpet, 25% off in stock tiles, and 25% off in stock granite slabs. All orders should be collected within 25 hours or storage fees will apply. See in store for terms and conditions. Save big in Parma Carpet pre-Christmas sale from November 24th through November 26th. Located on 317 North Sound Road, Industrial Park. Open Monday to Friday, 7:30 a.m. until 5 p.m. and Saturday, 7:30 a.m. till 2 p.m. Call 949-5000.
We do a whole lot more than just cover your floor at Paramount Carpet.
This is an extraordinary Black Friday at Tomlinson Furniture and the Mattress Gallery. 2 days only, Friday the 25th and Saturday the 26th of November. Huge savings on everything in stock. Up to 50% off plus free giveaways. This is the largest sale of the year. The perfect time to replace your mattress, buy your bedroom set, sofas, and anything you need for the home. The Black Friday sale at Tomlinson Furniture is where you get the best deals in town, with up to 50% off and free giveaways this Friday the 25th and Saturday the 26th of November. You have to hurry, it's while supplies last. Tomlinson Building, corner of Walkers and Hospital Road.
I hear Le Classique in the Strand having sale.
That's right, 25% or 50% off everything in the store, and shoes as low as $10 and $20.
1 day only, Black Friday blowout sale at Le Classique in the Strand. Yes, child, all shoes for men, all shoes for women, all jewelry, all bags, all wallets on sale for 1 day only.
Everything is 25% or 50% off store-wide. I got to make my way down to Le Classique in the Strand because it's only for 1 day.
If you're working, you better call in sick.
Friday, November 25th, 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. 1 day only at Le Classique in the Strand Shopping Complex.
But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us. Thanks to Sama Jackson and Bridget Kirkernel. We have 3 calls, including the gentleman who was so patient to let us take the news. And with respect to our guests and their present appointments and the fact that we're going to end at 2:30, could I ask our guests, our callers, to just help us get to our questions as succinctly as possible. Welcome back, sir. Thank you for holding on.
Yeah. Well, what I was trying to say, right, is that if it's not going to solve the bias identification on the island when it comes into use of the identification, and it's only going to be for the benefit of the profit that you could be making out of it, I don't think it makes any sense.
Okay. Very succinct point. Thank you for that, and of course we'll have you on as well. Let's take some other calls. Hey, good afternoon. Welcome. Thanks for calling.
Hi, afternoon Sterling, afternoon Sammy, afternoon Bridget, it's Johan Moxham. Hope all is well.
Good afternoon, Johan.
Thanks for showing up, guys, and for sharing your thoughts. I just had a quick question, and I'm not being facetious or being disrespectful, but if current government systems don't speak to each other, how do they propose to link them using this ID card? I've also had several sort of persons intimate that there's a legitimate concern that this could be how you develop a tax identification number for what would appear to be an inevitable sort of way of implementing a form of direct taxation. So, again, this thing hasn't been I guess conceptually, I understand what they're trying to do, but nothing in the IT space works in Cayman because we all submit the same data to different departments, but yet you're filling out the same forms and nobody can identify you from your name, your date of birth, or nothing. So what is the magic pill now that we're trying to solve, and at what cost to the country? But more importantly, data protection is real. There's a law that exists, and how are they going to manage all the risks when they can't get basic things to work now? So those are my questions, and I can't wait for your answers. Thanks a lot, guys.
Okay, thanks for that. Bridget?
Well, if I could, I have to agree with Johan because, no disrespect to anybody in computer services, but I recall they had upgraded the website for immigration for the thing that's called work. It's changed names so many times, but anyway, they'd upgraded the website, and we had a lot of problems. Months trying to get one of our companies to work. Long story short, they actually went back, and the current system that is being used now, they moved everything back because that one was working. But they had developed a new one, and it didn't work. And it was, and if a business has trouble using it, what about the people that aren't, they don't have a computer and they struggle with computers.
Or they don't have an IT department.
Or they don't have an IT department, yeah. And so I like Johan's point, because we need to get what is currently not fixed and working before we do this absolutely overarching, huge plan. And by the way, when you look at the Auditor General's report, there is no approved strategy. They are working, now that may have changed since June 2022, but the Auditor General pointed out that the e-government have no strategy that has been agreed upon. So they're using, I don't know what they're doing, but I can't know, but the point is that they don't have, according to what I've read, there is no overarching strategy at all. It's not joined up. And Johan makes a good point.
And to add to that, I happen to know that the government has been working on this since at least 2016. There were trips to Estonia, that were intended to implement a better data sharing or actual data sharing system between government departments, which is necessary. That's nothing more frustrating than going into the company registry, and being told that you need to get a document from the Trade and Business License Secretariat, which is literally one desk over, and then you got to go to the other side of the counter, get that document, bring it back to the other side of the counter. That is the kind of thing that promotes the dysfunction in government right now. Right. So fix that. I agree, 100%. And if you can't fix that, if you can't demonstrate to us that you're able to fix that, and we've been working on it for 8 years now, or 6 years? What's the point?
Yeah.
What's the point of trying to implement this ambitious project? Because the reality is, this goes far beyond, right? In terms of what this proposes to do, far beyond the scope of national ID. And I don't want to criticize anyone, but really and truly, if we are not able to demonstrate that we can manage the basic systems we have in place now, I find it more than a little bit scary to hand over the level of information that this new digital registry system would require of us. And especially so when you see provisions for outsourcing it to someone else or delegating it to another entity, etc.
Yeah. We do have a couple of other callers online. We thank them for calling. Hey, good afternoon, welcome. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, hey, good afternoon, Sterling.
Good afternoon, welcome, man. How are you?
I'm pretty good. How you doing?
Blessed, man. Very, very excellent.
Good afternoon to you, panel, to Mr. Colonel, and to Sammy.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Right. I only heard literally about 5 minutes before your break, and so my brain kicked in pretty quickly, and I've been listening since. Sorry, so I don't know how much has been discussed. Obviously, the two of you guests are there. It sounds as if they're against the system. Like I said, I don't know the substance. Sounds like they have some concerns, and I certainly respect both of them. But the question was asked, which is perhaps what triggered my call, was, well, why do we need it, and the whole nine? And I can think of a few instances that I think we legitimately need some sort of identification system. Nothing has been more vexing for Caymanians that I think about in the past than to be asked to identify or to prove that you're Caymanian.
Right. But I think just to help you, I think that's been the challenge. And only forgive me for interjecting because we got a couple of the callers. We have to be respectful of the two guests. But to get to
I can go very quickly.
Yeah.
Go very quickly.
No. And I want you to say your point, but I was saying that there's two pieces of legislation and the ID. So go right ahead.
Right. So there was the whole notion about identifying why you're Caymanian, and I think that was perhaps one of the key things that I think they said this national ID would help. Now, I don't know how they were able to necessarily make that work if it's not mandatory, but certainly those of us who don't want to be frustrated in that stance, and if your two guests have never been asked that at a workplace before in their life, then they don't know how very demeaning that is. And trust me, there are companies who actually will hold people to that, knowing full well that Caymanians have a real challenge to identify that they're Caymanian. That's the first thing. The second thing that I can think about when you talk about work permits, and I know one of your guests there mentioned about there being, I think she said housekeepers and something else having problems getting bank accounts.
According to the bankers, yes.
Yeah, that's not just them. That's also Caymanians, and again, unless you are well established or otherwise, and they're able to identify who you are, I can tell you that the average Caymanian having to produce two pieces of ID becomes a real challenge for many of them. And so, how do we solve that issue is what I would get at, and how do we solve the former one? And lastly, what I'll say is this: I also know that our law enforcement, and that's across the board, not just the police, but also, for example, the very real work for immigration, with nearly 65% of our workforce being foreign expatriate labor, which a lot of these companies are promoting, and the whole nine. Maybe that's where the frustration is coming in for them. Maybe I need to better understand why there's such a kickback at this time, perhaps from the business community. But I know that our law enforcement agencies and those who are trying to enforce immigration laws, for example, being able to go up to someone and ask them, can you produce who you are and what you're doing and that you are legally right and the whole nine? That should help. Now, what I would love for the two learned people there to do, perhaps, is to speak to how we can, if they have concerns about who is managing that data and stuff, then tell us how best that we should go about making sure that the regulations and stuff speak to how that
but that's
is managed.
But that's the challenge, I think, from what he shared. There are two pieces of legislation that create two different things, right?
Fine, but we can streamline all of that is what I'm getting at. I think the argument for some sort of identification system, though, as far as I can recall and certainly share and identify with and support, has been established long time ago. And I can't think of any country that doesn't have a national that's worth their salt, that doesn't have some sort of a national ID system. And regards to all the personal data, guys, they already have all that. We're born in the hospitals. They have all those things. What we got, the amount of money that's in our bank accounts. Well, if they're asking that, that's stupid. If you want that for a national ID system, but let's streamline. Let's help them to get it right, rather than saying that there's not an argument. Because I can tell you where I live and breathe, there's a tremendous amount of arguments for some sort of identification system, and one which is to stop asking me to prove that I'm Caymanian.
You mean like a Caymanian passport?
Well, you tell me. When
because I'm going to suggest a novel concept. Maybe we approach it.
When I tried to give a passport to the bank, one point in time, they gave me a very hard time, and I've called into the show about that, Sammy. The truth is that I was told at one point in time, I remember we were telling people in the public that the passport was a travel document. It's not even worth its salt. We need something, Sam.
But I agree. I agree with you, and I hear your concerns. But the reality is that we sort of lost our way with the passport. I spoke to that earlier. Passports suffice for banking and other purposes all over the globe. If other countries can accept it as valid ID, why can't it be used here? Well, we know why. We can't use it to prove that we're Caymanian because we stupidly gave away passports to non-Caymanians.
But
here's a novel approach. Let's revoke all of them and reissue them to only Caymanians, like what happens in other nations. Because
I totally agree with you on that.
That could be an easy solution, couldn't it? We already have the passport platform, and after all, they all expire at some point. We don't even need to revoke them. But
I totally agree with you, though, and that is, but that is at the heart of it. I mean, that is at the heart of. It's not worth its salt. Then we should do away with it, or try to find something that works. But I can tell you, Caymanians really reject at the core of it, being asked to your Caymanian and don't have something to be able to say that, and need to go get your mama birth certificate, need to go get your own birth certificate.
But here's a question though, right?
Then you don't know how demeaning that is.
Yeah, but here's a question. The thing that this ID bill would ask for you to prove that you're Caymanian, are they not the same things
the same documents?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I hear that, Dwayne. But what I'm saying is, for these two very fine folks inside there, maybe they can help us to say, well, let's talk about what we really need and what we don't need, versus the fact that, because what I was hearing is that we don't think we even need the whole notion of some sort of identification.
Not at all.
The truth, and I'm going to leave it is this: the truth of the matter is, much of what we're enduring though has been, and that is Caymanians predominantly, has been because of the financial services industry and the whole know your customer and due diligence and the whole nine. So partly a lot of our frustrations has happened because of that same industry.
But to your point though, that's what was said. The ID card, I mean, I let Simon speak, I just trying to facilitate the platform. But thank you for that. I don't know if you want to clarify that, Simon, as we go to the next caller, but thanks, Mr. Ebanks, for sharing that. Simon?
Yeah, well, obviously the problem with that caller didn't have the benefit of listening to the earlier part of the show where we spoke to the two different types of legislation and why one is necessary and one might be necessary or justifiable and the other might not.
Yeah.
I understand his frustrations. I have experienced that myself. I have had a clerk of courts after practicing for 10 plus years write to me saying that before I get my practice certificate renewed, I needed to prove that I was Caymanian. And that provoked a certain response from me. I won't share that. But
Mr. McPhail said that likewise as well.
I know what that is, and the stupid thing is that in that scenario I couldn't produce my passport to prove I was Caymanian because I was told that there are non-Caymanians have a passport, which begs the question: what are we doing? And to my earlier point, if that's the problem, why not fix that problem first? Why do we need a digitized card with as Johan said earlier, a number that could be and you see, this is something that we need to focus on with regards to the digital registry bill. What you're going to engender here, what the government is going to engender here is fair. The fact that not just what they're doing, right, and the open-ended sort of murky, undefined potential scope of the law, that's scary enough. But doing it in a fashion they've done it, with two pieces of legislation going forward parallel, no proper public consultation, you're going to scare a lot of folks who we benefit from economically, living here, buying property, spending money at the various businesses around the island. If they come to the conclusion, as Johan said, someone or maybe other and more than one voiced a concern about that this is the primer, this is the first step towards taxation. They're not going to wait around till it happens, right? And when you look at the National Registry law or bill, and you see that it includes not only permanent residents and Caymanians, but also persons ordinarily resident here, they're going to have a concern. Those folks are going to be concerned about this. We all know why. And that begs the question then, do we really understand the magnitude of what we're doing? Right? Is there some explanation? Because we came here to ask questions, you know. We're not hypothesizing on anything. I've proffered a few possible explanations, but mostly everything we've said has been couched as a question because there are far more questions than answers, and that is exactly the real problem. That's the nub of the problem. We don't have the kind of benefit of feedback from the government. We're all of a sudden, since a few folks have been asking questions, there's been a lot of promotion in the air about what the bill is and promises being made, assurances being given. But as I said, I'm a lawyer. When I look at legislation, I don't care. I tune out whatever I hear around the discussion around it. I look at it and I try to understand it for myself. And when I did that exercise, right, and Bridget came to the same conclusion. She's not a legally trained person, but I can tell you her interpretation, her understanding of it was spot on. She came to me and asked me questions. What about that section, Sam? And I said, well, that's terrible. And here's why. And because it's not just badly worded in some instances, it's vague and it's ripe for abuse. And I'm talking about the registry bill now, not the national ID card bill, because I haven't had time to look at that yet.
Yeah, and this is why to the last caller, respect for I'm saying there are two pieces of legislation being proposed, not please don't conflate the two, because I think that happened. You know, we do have a couple of the callers, and I do ask our callers to be very brief. I want to respect your prior commitments. Hey, good afternoon, welcome, thanks for calling.
Good afternoon, Dwayne, and your guests. How are you today?
Hey, good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good, thank you. Okay, just to get straight to the points. First of all, I think a good number of good points have been made by your guests. The whole system of consultation needs to improve. You can't just put out the bills, particularly bills as important as this, and then say, well, within 28 days, and then we'll enact them. I think there's a need for example, maybe a parliamentary committee to be able to look at these issues and people actually to come in and give evidence regarding them. You can't do that with every bill, but there's just need for greater consultation, more structured consultation in relation to matters such as this. But having said that, I think the problem here is that these bills are not really homegrown in the sense that they are not wanted by the local people. I don't think so. I think it is the usual thing about the handlers out there, the ones who are not elected, but they tell the government, this is what we want you to do. The other thing is, you see, this issue about regulations. In Cayman, we love to operate in a vacuum. So they've drafted a law which leaves so much in the regulations, and I think even the leader of the opposition pointed this out. You shouldn't do that. As a matter of general principle, the principles should be in the legislation, particularly in an area relating to fundamental human rights. The right to privacy is relevant to this discussion, and you can't leave certain details to be determined by the registrar as to what else they may be able to work on, and so on. I've got really some other points to make, but the last one which I should make is this. This idea that they have already ordered the cards before the legislation is passed is absolutely ridiculous, because you are preempting the House. You are telling the House, you don't matter. We've already made up our mind. Just as a matter of principle, it is wrong to start doing something on an assumption that a law is going to be passed. This is what they did with the Public Service Management Law. They were appointing chief officers before the legislation was passed, and when I was helping to draft that legislation, I said, you couldn't do that. They said, well, what do you know? Let me end there. I could have said a little more, but we're out of time. Thanks very much. Thanks for the time.
No, thank you for that, too, and with great respect. Perhaps this is the final call, Ms. Susan. Good afternoon. Welcome. Thanks for calling.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm well.
All right.
Hello, the last three gentlemen who called. Well, I tuned in just a while ago, so I can only imagine what I missed of this conversation. I hear about this modern ID card. I'm not modern. I'm an old one. I don't understand anything about IT, etc., etc. I don't know what I should be wary of. Where I want to take this conversation. For those of you guys who understand the system, please advocate on my behalf and be very questioning, making the questions for me, because I don't know what to ask. But I want to talk to us Caymanians, those of us who are without appropriate modern papers, those of us who are the last of the Mohicans, those of us who have DNA to terra firma, those of us who have the boneyard list, real Caymanians. I wonder, I'm asking, and I'm going to ask this question, salient question, because this is about the fourth time now I've heard people mention this, that this new initiative is only leading us toward taxation. Guys, if we have DNA to terra firma as Caymanians, if we are proud and if we are grateful for the privilege of being Caymanians, why can't we roll up and pay taxes? Some sort of direct taxation, yes. Mostly income tax. When we paying income taxes, all of the rest of the billion-dollar guys going to have to pay it too. And if we sit down on our laurels and we got paid 10% and they paid 0.000%, then that's on us. It is high time, and this is not even really what you all are talking about, but since taxation is just, I will mention. It is high time we put on our adult understanding and pay for our own country. We all and sundry believe that our bills are paid through immigration, and you see where that got us. But if we were paying our direct taxation, where everybody else had to pay their direct taxation, and yes, the government might need a whole entire agency to take care of that. But let us pay our taxes. Oh, it's going to be too expensive. No, the structure of income fees through the ports of entry will have to change because, after all, we're not stupid. So let us pay our taxes. And guys, with the card, I don't really want it because I'm like a redneck from America. I don't want the government to know nothing about me. But I'm going to play modern and I come and get my card.
Okay.
All right.
Let's hope they don't tax you for it.
Yeah.
I come and get my card.
That's obviously a little bit off topic, but
yeah. Thanks very much. Thank you. As we close, let me just share this and then I invite you to share. One of our listeners says in relation to the cost. So the cost is stated at $1 million per year for government to implement the ID. No business case will support that. Plus, its effects on our rights to privacy is opaque at best. If government really wants to save the public time, please spend this money to fix delays in the planning department, immigration, or on fixing our traffic problem. That will save us all time and money without any controversy regarding direct taxation or other potential abuse. That's from one of our listeners.
That's a very astute assessment, I think, of this current situation. And at the end of the day, Dwayne, that's why we're here. We came here to ask questions. I have to say this because I don't want anybody to think that I came here to beat up on the government. I have no political hat in this race, as you know, right? I fight my own battles and based on principle. And I have to say that I find it shameful that Bridget and I have to carry the torch for this one when we have our opposition drawing paychecks, right? This is one of the most momentous pieces of legislation that came down the pike in a long time. And I understand that probably the reason they can't raise their voice too high because they're compromising that they were the original proposers of it, which begs the question, why is this current government blindly cheerleading a bill or two bills that was given birth to by the PPM? And, why do we have to come here, right? Spend our time reading this thing through? And I can tell you that, I give you the answer to that, because we care. We actually are concerned about the future of this country, right? And there's lots of other folks who are of an equal mindset who don't necessarily enjoy the ability, like Bridget and I do, of independence from certain employment, etc., who are of the same view and would like to speak up but can't. So we are speaking on their behalf. And all we're saying, is look to the government, put the brakes on, give us some full and frank disclosure about what this is really all about. Tell us why this needs to be so vague, right? Engage with us, inform us about the need, and for God's sake, I sound like Joe Biden now.
Jeez,
almost.
I didn't mean laugh.
Do a cost-benefit analysis, right? And tell us and share that with us. After all, if we're paying for it, right? We pay for the cost-benefit analysis. We should see what that is so that we know what the further cost would be down the road. Isn't that what openness and transparency is all about?
Or the simple economics, right? I really appreciate that you shared two private citizens feeling sufficiently concerned about the country to talk about proposed legislation in the limited understanding that many of us may have about the parliamentary process. We have 19 people elected to the House, one of whom sits as Speaker, so there are 18 left. We know the divisions, seemingly as it is now. The government proposes legislation. The government has the numbers to make that legislation come into fruition, to amend it, and there can be a lot of talk from people. With the greatest respect to all, and as you shared, the opposition now isn't serving as Irish's lawyers opposition. What do we as a public can do? Because if the government says they're going to pass it, it's a done deal.
Well, what we as a public can do is, this hopefully is step one to empower people to know what to ask. Because I said this earlier, but every time I asked a question of anybody in power, I was distracted like Bridget that's no big deal. Look at this shiny object issue over here. You should be thinking of this. And that was very insulting. And, probably drove me to do this because this is not something I would normally do. But the public has been, maybe hoodwinked is too strong, but I can tell you, hand over heart, I already know that a bunch of them have not even cracked open this bill. They didn't have the interest on both sides of the aisle. So I hold both of them equally responsible for the lack of information that they have given the public. And I've been part of a group that has asked, hey, will you start having public meetings? And you know what we were told? Hey, well, you know what? You give me some of your points of concern and we will have a public meeting. And I was actually working towards that, and that's why I contacted Sammy. And then I'm like, wait a minute, that's their job. Correct. And I think that what we're beginning to forget here, that we elected them to serve. It's not the other way around. And we need to start holding, if you feel passionate about a piece of legislation, you know what? Don't trust that they are going to go and investigate it. Try and make the time, if you can, to investigate it yourself, because we cannot depend on people. And you should always depend on yourself and find things out yourself. But the older I get, the more skeptical I get about government, and not Cayman government. I mean worldwide. And I grew up thinking, oh, your government is looking out for you. The older I get, the more I'm like, okay, I'm going to take that with a grain of salt and check this out. But sometimes you have to go kicking and screaming like this to get anybody to listen. And that is not the way it should be. I want to see, I don't care who's in power. I've come to that conclusion. I just want to see them do their job and start. We need some kind of opposition because we've got none. And I'm not saying to oppose stuff for the sake of opposing it. I'm saying where it's sensible, support it, and where it's not, don't. But nothing is happening.
But no proposed bill is perfect.
Nothing.
And there should be some sort of parliamentary debate, not this absolute apathy that we see.
Total apathy.
Again and again. And really and truly, every government will propose something that should be questioned. It is a healthy approach to be skeptical about anything that any government. And why shouldn't you ask them what they're doing? Why shouldn't you sit down, go to the point you made? What can we do as citizens? Each and every one of us now has a personal representative, so to speak. That was one of the gifts. That was the greatest gift that could be given to mankind politically, was what I heard. I opposed it. There's one man, one vote.
That's awesome.
So you all have representatives. Go and ask them to explain to you what this bill does, and hold them accountable. Ask them specific questions. Ask them if this is going to, how this is going to impact you, and make a note of what they say. Right? And that you deserve that level of interaction with them, because that's what we pay them for. That's what we elected them to do. Not to rest on their laurels. And I mean, I've heard it all. I've seen parliamentary sessions where a parliamentarian said, Madam Speaker, I didn't read the bill, but I'm supporting it. I mean, this is the most outrageous thing I've ever heard. And that is, I am convinced, par for the course down there now. Right? And something of this nature, the opposition should be all over it.
They should be.
I don't know why they're not.
Right. Well, you just shared.
But they all should be all over it, frankly. If they all read it, they would have. They're all sensible enough to have the same concerns, or at least questions.
In this day and age where you have all these conspiracy theories abound about, a new world order, etc. That's, Bridget said to me the other day, something profound. Today's conspiracy theory is tomorrow's truth. And when you see things, right, certain manifestos that have certain proposals that align with organizations like the WEF, right? And you see the legislation like this coming down the pike, you start to wonder. You're tempted to develop a conspiracy theory of your own. If nobody can tell you, and government can tell you where this came from, who it benefits, like I said earlier, quo bono. What's the benefit to this? Because we're going to pay for this in more ways than one. We're going to pay out of pocket, and we're going to pay the price of having our liberty revoked, right? and our information stolen from us under a legislative regime, like I said, that the director of the NSA would give it his eyeball for, right? I've never seen anything like it, and the most shocking thing for me is the absolute lack of interest on the part of parliamentarians to actually have a discussion about this.
And perhaps the voters by extension.
And send in the civil service staff who are doing the nuts and bolts stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You can't expect them. They're not lawyers. They don't know. They're told what it's going to implement, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're probably sold the same line we're sold. And they're out there promoting it and saying, no, it's voluntary. Yeah, one aspect of it is voluntary. But when you look at the bigger, the most important aspect of the combined legislative regime, it is frightening, right? And that's why we're here.
Well, I thank you both for coming. Thanks to our callers, and I appreciate the few extra minutes. As Bridget was sharing, I was thinking back to, what former U.S. President Ronald Reagan used to say: "Trust but verify."
Indeed.
And I'm hoping that for me, as it would be for others, you remind us there are two bits of legislation that's coming to the House. The way they look at them, the importance of it, the need for parliamentarians to engage, for voters to be informed.
Citizens need to question more.
Yep.
Yeah.
Ask questions.
Yes.
That's the only how you learn.
All right. Well, I've learned a bit. Hopefully others have. Thank you both. Trust and pray the weekend will be, very rewarding, restful. Hope to come you back on.
Thank you to your listeners.
All right. Monday is Monday. God's willing, we'll be a part of it. Join Mr. Art for the record. Come back for Talk Today. Yeah, all I'm going to say is be blessed.
Talk Today is brought to you by Subway, open 24 hours in Countryside, Anderson Square in Georgetown, and Centennial Towers in West Bay. And by the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands. MedLab in Smith Road Plaza, your complete medical laboratory solution. Call 949-7331.
Talk Today is proudly brought to you by Pirates Fest 2022. Stay in the know. Get the full event lineup at piratesfestcayman.com.
And Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village. Convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays.
46 years.
3 beloved isles. 1 beloved station, Radio Cayman.
The voice.
The heart, the soul of the Cayman Islands.